One of the things I try to do in this podcast, and still trying to develop my voice in it, but one of the things I'm working on doing in this podcast is speaking to people where they're at. So the difference between me and what you find in a lot of online influencers, the online influencers will teach you where you should be if you were to follow church teaching. But what I come from is where you are and why the church teaching is very wise, but you need to deepen your understanding of it to comprehend the wisdom in church teaching. And so it's two different perspectives that you may deal with. If you're listening to the online influencers, they'll be talking about, as I said, where you should be. And if you listen to people like me, we'll say, well, we hear where you are. That's why you may hear things on the podcast with me describing things of, having difficult experiences in the past. And maybe you can sense, which I try to avoid, but it comes out. Maybe you can sense some bitterness that may come out. That's all real world stuff. That's not me. And no one brought this to my attention, by the way. I'm just bringing this to yours. That's not me complaining against the church. That's not me being negative against the church. That's speaking the real world stuff, saying, you can, and that's what I talked about with Dietrich Bonhoeffer. You can expect the church to be filled with holy people, and in fact, it isn't. And Pope Francis used to say that, and I used to reiterate that as well, building on what he would say, as he said, the church is a hospital for sinners. Well, I work in hospital ministry. I have yet to meet anyone in the hospital who is there because they're healthy. I have yet to meet anyone like that, except for the workers. But, and that's the reality. You're going to deal with real human people in the church. And one of the things I do this homily every so often is to keep in mind that don't expect the person next to you, who you may not know, to be a saint, because the person may be a sinner trying to become a saint, but they are a sinner. And one of the interesting things that happened a long time ago is during the abuse crisis, there were the major networks that were surrounding the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston. And I was celebrating the Spanish language Mass downstairs in the cathedral, where we did it. And because upstairs in the cathedral, the cardinal or someone else would be preparing for Mass. And CNN came in. And I come from a media family. I am not very enamored by the media. But I also understand that people come into churches and they want to escape and turn away from their past life of sinfulness. They want to come to a new way of living. And the last thing they want to see in a church is a TV camera from the local network or whatever. And so I spoke in Spanish to the people in the parish at the Mass, and I said to them, CNN just walked in, do you want them here? And there was a resounding no. And I stopped the Mass and I looked at CNN and I said in English, we have community leadership here, and the leaders of the community, the whole community actually said, they don't want you here, so please leave. And they stayed, and then I stopped the Mass again. I said, gentlemen, you've been asked to leave, or words to these effect, you've been asked to leave the Mass, please leave. And they turned around and they walked away. And the following day, I called the local producer of CNN and I said, you never walk into a Catholic Mass or any kind of service. I don't care whether Catholic, I didn't say it this way, I'm saying it to you. I don't care whether it's Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or Unitarian Universalist or Hindu or whatever. You never ever do that, because people go to churches to leave their past life behind. Not everyone, but some. And the last thing they need is a TV camera. So I said to her, I said, you never walk into a church or any place of worship with a TV camera. And she went, yes, Father, I know. I spoke to the crew and I let them know. And, it's one thing to, if they ask to come in, but just to walk in. I said, you never do that. Because there is the reality of people walking into church trying to leave their life behind. But then there are others who may be in church and maybe they are living saints, and we've met those, and they're wonderful people. And then you meet others who may act like living saints, but everyone knows they aren't doing the right thing. And that's all part of church. By the way, Jesus said that. It's an important thing to remember. You can turn around and say, you need to leave the church because you're not, the right kind of person. Well, Jesus says when you do that, then what's going to happen is not only is the person you don't want to be in the church going to be there, but so is the one you want to be in the church, and they're going to take it the wrong way. And he said that actually in a different way. If you tell some people to leave, they're going to take others with them. So no, you never want to do that. That's the nature of a community. And it's the nature of everything to do with the church. So if you come into the church and expecting this center of holiness, it's not going to work that way. If you walk into the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and expect a whole bunch of bishops, everyone, if they all died tomorrow, they'd all be canonized. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. Because every person you encounter in the church is a human person. And they have their good sides and their bad sides. And in fact, if you watch, remember the words of Saul Alinsky, go after the church by going after her sins. It's words from Saul Alinsky making it clear that, yes, there are sinners in the church, and use that, because that's what the devil does. Remember, he emulates the devil. That's what the devil does. Use that to take down the church. That's what the devil does. Well, the reason why I bring that up is today's first reading comes from Malachi. Now, Malachi is actually written around the time of Nehemiah and Baruch and all that time, and it's really around the time of the rebuilding of the temple and the rebuilding of Judah after Cyrus the Persian conquered Babylon. But what do you see in this? And you see something that's often a complaint. Why should I worship the Lord when you see people who have nothing to do with God prosper? And that's a question you see in the Old Testament in various places. Why should I worship the Lord when you see people who have who do not worship the Lord and they're just absolutely crooked in all they do, they prosper? It is a good question. And if you don't understand the answer to that question, you can become very bitter and angry in this world and say, but I go to church every Sunday. And, this guy down the street who owns a huge mansion and owns half of Podunk City, classic example, It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Potter, they're doing well. But keep in mind, the Lord makes it clear in today's reading that he talks about this, and he makes it clear that, don't worry. Trust me, there will come the day that they will be held in judgment. That's my word, not his, because his are pretty intense. They will be held in judgment, and your names will be in the book of life. Keep that in mind. Their permanence is actually, I know this is an oxymoron, their permanence is actually limited. It doesn't work that way. And don't worry, but we look at some of the words and we look at what's being said here, and it's fascinating because this can lead you to get discouraged in church. Billy Smith down the street's never been to church in his life, and look at him. He owns half of Podunk City, and he's doing really well. Everything's fine. But do keep in mind, that's the way it appears. That may not be the way it really is. And always keep that in mind. And this is one of the things that we're seeing in the book of Malachi. In this particular reading today, it's addressing that powerful truth. Now, you can see that, by the way, in what is known as the post-exilic period. Now, what does that mean? Well, you had the Babylonian exile. So after the Babylonian exile, that's called the post-exilic period, after the exile. Now, what was going on before the exile? It's described pretty well. We see it's similar in what was going on in Israel before Assyria conquered it. What's going well? The rich who have no love of God, no love of his commandments, could care less. They may be just going through the motions at the temple if they're doing anything at all. This is not all the people at the temple, just these very rich. And there they are, and they could care less about the poor. This was the reading about 3-4 weeks ago on Sunday from Amos. They could care less. They live high and mighty, and they are loaded. And the Lord says, not only is their time coming, but they're the first ones that are going to go. That's in Amos. And that very thing is what's being said here. Yeah, you can see all those people doing extremely well, and it can make you bitter, and it can make you angry. But do know there is going to be a time where you're going to realize and be thankful you weren't them. And this is part of what it means to be a Catholic. It's realizing that these realities exist, but when we are faithful to the Lord, even in the face of that, we know that our reward is long-standing. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast.
Life can be challenging, but amidst the trials and tribulations, there is wisdom to be found. Welcome to Sirach 2, a chapter filled with timeless guidance and insights from the book of Sirach. In this chapter, we learn the importance of remaining steadfast in our faith, even in the face of adversity. It teaches us to be patient, for trials can shape our character and lead to spiritual growth. Seeking wisdom and understanding is of utmost importance. Sirach 2 reminds us to study the teachings of the wise, be open to correction, and follow God's commandments. By doing so, we can find true fulfillment and blessings. Don't be discouraged by the temporary prosperity of the wicked or the challenges you may face. Trust in God's justice, for he rewards those who diligently seek him. Join us on this journey of faith as we discover the path to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Sirach 2 is your roadmap to wisdom, patience, and eternal blessings. Read Sirach 2 and let its timeless wisdom guide you through life's ups and downs. Available now in the book of Sirach, part of the Old Testament. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer, previews of upcoming podcasts, previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com, your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.
We're back, and so we're talking about this first reading and the reality of it in Malachi. There are people we know of, and, you know, they would see them in the newspaper all the time, who are extremely successful, but they could care less about God. And we go, why should we follow anything to do with God when we see this? And that's what the reading is all about. Don't worry. The Lord is saying, you be righteous. It's one of the principles you're going to see in the Bible a lot. I mean, one of the reasons for people seeking to follow in idolatrous ways is they saw that those who practiced the idolatrous faith were more successful. And therefore they said, well, why don't we do that? And we can be more successful and more prosperous. But how prosperous and successful are they? As successful and prosperous as they want to be. You might say, well, that's about as American as can be. Yes, you're right. That really is. But you notice, what is it the Lord calls us to do? The Lord says he will make us successful. He will make us prosperous to the level that he realizes is best for us. It's a whole different dynamic. So, one of the things that someone I found out later was fascinated by it. One of the things I said from the altar one time is, remember, you see these billionaires who are loaded with all this money, and they're billionaires. They don't have to worry about money ever. I mean, if they lost $1 million a year, they die billionaires still. What? Well, figure it. If you lose $1 million a year, you would take 1,000 years to lose $1 billion at $1 million a year. Because what is $1 billion? $1 billion is 1,000 million. So as you can see, they don't have to worry financially about anything else. And that's an important principle. But you look at that, and one of the things I preached is, when you die and stand before the Lord, you are responsible for every dollar you owned. Do you see that? So the Lord will say, and this is right in the Old Testament, and did you help the poor? There's an old joke. I don't know if I can tell it. It's about some guy. It's actually a certain occupation, which I will not go into, but it's an old joke about a guy who was loaded, and he goes to the gates of heaven, and he goes, and the St. Peter's there, and discovers that his name is not in the book of life. And he says, it's got to be there. I mean, I wasn't a bad person. And St. Peter calls St. Joseph. St. Joseph, what do I do? He says his name should be in the book of life. He says, ask him if he ever helped anyone else financially. He says, yeah, just last week I gave someone a nickel who was asking for help. He says, okay. He says, any other time? He's thinking. Yeah, about 2 years ago I gave someone a nickel who was asking for help. So Peter relays that information to Joseph, and then he says, what should I do, Joseph? He says, give him back his dime and tell him to go to hell. I don't know if you like that. But you see what I'm saying? Yet there are people, Mother Teresa talks about people who are very, very poor, who not only accept what they have that to help them in their poverty, they share it with people who are equally as poor or more so. Do you see that? And that's something that just fascinates us, because that's people who understand the gift of God. Do you realize that? So, I mean, you literally are responsible, if you have billions of dollars, for every dollar you own. And this is what the Lord is saying. Don't worry. Don't worry about these people who do great evil and become very rich. There's this, I'm not going to get into it, but there's this intensely evil plot that angers me because it affects the church. It's against the church. And the Catholic media, this is why I don't like Catholic media, has never addressed it. It's right out in the open. Anyone who does, a modicum of research can see that. I have addressed this with certain groups, and they go, there it is, just follow the money of people who are attacking the church on a financial level. But no one does anything about it. And especially the Catholic media, which is why I have zero respect for the Catholic media. And it's right out in the open. People who are making money in such a way, in a very unjust and a completely unjust way. But you look at that and say, and how can God allow this? It's like, if only those people knew how poison that money was. It's not so much the tactic they are using, it's what they're doing with the tactic and how they are enriching themselves and others for power. So they're getting money and power. And this is exactly what Malachi is talking about. Why should I worship God when I watch these people get money unjustly through extortion, make and take this money and use it to enhance their power and others people's powers. And why should I worship the Lord when he allows that? And what Malachi says is, you watch, because there will come a day that those people will get their reward, and it's not a happy one. That's true. And that's right there back in Malachi. This is what Malachi is talking about. And so people will say, why should I worship the Lord when they're doing that? This is the Lord's, just because you're worshiping the Lord during this time is changing and deepening your powerful relationship with God. And it's leading you into an eternal happiness that the others will never experience. They will never know, because they're all focused on the things of this world, and they will be rich in this world. There's a great, I think it was a Twilight Zone, and I got to be careful what I say because I don't want to give out the whole thing, but they came up with this wonderful idea, in Twilight Zone terms, of stealing a whole bunch of gold and going to sleep for 100 years. So that when they woke up, this gold that would have a certain amount of value at the time they went to sleep, 100 years later, well, you could imagine what it would have. Well, it's the Twilight Zone. So I'm not going to finish the story. I don't know the name of it. You can do a search for it. I think it was one of the 2 episodes that were an hour long. You can do a search for it and see if you can find it, and you might be able to figure the rest. But in any case, that's it. It was, don't forget, these people who will do anything to enrich themselves and enrich others with this power, which is what Malachi is talking about. Don't envy them ever, because their power and status and money is not long-standing. And this is important. Now, if they do great things with their money and they use their money, in ways that assist people and everything else, that's fine. They're in service to the Lord with their great money. That's wonderful. But those who reject the Lord and try to silence the Lord and try to silence the voice of the Lord and try to take power or encourage others with their own power, you would never, ever, ever want to be them. Even if you would say, wow, they're all set now, you would never, ever, ever want to be them. It reminds me of a story that happened when I was a caddy, and I was a caddy at a very elite golf course. The caddies weren't from elite areas. As a matter of fact, they were from most of them were from Boston. But they had this summer opportunity. We had the summer opportunity to work in this a very elite golf course. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. And now you can't get on that golf course unless you were a member. I mean, you can say, well, that's like any other golf course. No. You can't even get within, 2 miles of that golf course, because there is one road onto it's on an island with a road that takes you on the island. No bridge or anything. It's a road that takes you on the island. The island is surrounded by water except for where this bridge is. And there is a gatehouse there. So you can't even get on the island unless you are an elite member of this golf course. Right? So we used to caddy there. And they're very fine people with lots of money and everything else. But you want to think, and you can say, wow, it would be great to have that kind of money. It would, but you're responsible for it. Would you want to be part of that? And I will never forget, I've told this story in homilies, I will never forget the day that a very elite family, it was 5 brothers, came up to golf at this golf course. And these were, if I told you the name, you'd know it right away. And these very 5 elite brothers, they weren't politicians. They might have. Maybe there's 1 or 2. But, I mean, they were known. They were captains of industry. And they were loaded. A huge amount of money. Big name. You'd know the name right away. And they came up. And everyone else literally froze. I'm not saying just they stopped or they just went. No, they froze in place because this elite group of brothers came into their presence, and they admired them more than anyone else, and they literally froze and didn't move an inch. Maybe they blinked. That was about it, until those 5 brothers finished their business at the pro shop, went to the first hole, teed off, and then they disappeared, and then they started moving again. That's how much money meant to so many people. And they were wonderful. They were fine people, but money was like, but they are here. And I won't say the name of the family because everything was connected to money. And the Lord is saying, that's wonderful if you use it correctly. But if you don't, trust me, it will become a curse. So this reading today, when you go to Mass and you hear this reading, it literally is focusing on those people who become rich, could care less about anyone else, and the poor turn around and say, why should we worship God when this is the reward for not caring about God or anybody else? And the Lord says, oh no, you just maintain your relationship with God, because there is a huge benefit to that they will never see. As a matter of fact, it's going to be destructive if they use their money and their success to turn away from God. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Are you feeling overwhelmed, burdened by the challenges of life? Take a moment to find solace in the words of 1 Peter 5.
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time.
In times of trial, remember the power of humility. Trust in God's timing, for he will lift you up when the time is right.
Cast all your anxiety upon him, because he cares for you.
Release your worries and anxieties unto the Lord, for he cares for you deeply. Find comfort in his loving embrace.
And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, shall himself perfect, establish, and strengthen you.
These are just a few verses from 1 Peter 5, offering you hope, encouragement, and guidance. Tune into the Bible, the source of everlasting wisdom.
Bible verses based on the American Standard Version.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudio.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.
We're back. And tomorrow we're going to continue in Malachi. And of course, that continues, that brings us to the end of the week. And then we're going to be next week, obviously, continuing our program here where we talk about the first reading. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I do this program reaching out to just the regular person. So the people who, just like you see in Malachi today, who ask those questions. Why is it that I try my best? And, you see people who have even nothing to do with God, and look at how well they are. There is a famous poem called Richard Cory. As a matter of fact, Paul Simon, I don't think he wrote the poem, but he put it in a song that touches on that very thing. It's a little graphic, so, viewer discretion is advised, although it's listener or reader's discretion is advised. But it's called Richard Cory, and it talks about that very, very same reality. When we see people who seem to not have a care in the world, and it's not necessarily in the poem, but they could care less about God, they could care less about others, they don't have a care in the world. Fascinating little thing. In the meantime, we will be back tomorrow, and don't forget to subscribe. Please comment and send me questions if you want, if you need me to answer a question. And we're here every single day. Have a blessed day. The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the participants. Although the Catholic teaching here is represented as accurately as possible, the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.